Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. Hey, warmer friendly hello, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Cuts Soups with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. As joining me in segment number 2 is going to be Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast Rob's Best Bets. We're going to be chatting with him about what he's all noticed in college basketball over the last few weeks. Things have been unique to this year. A few teams in Miami and UW Green Bay that just appear to have, for lack of a better term, quit. What he's been noticing with regards to some of these east to west and west to east road trips as well. We'll dive in on a few games for Monday, and we'll talk about the ineptitude that we're seeing in the ACC right now as well. So lots of fun coming up with Rob in the second segment. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GDED_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it. Try to find some trends and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Michigan finds a way to get the job done against Northwestern in overtime, 80-76. The final, they certainly don't cover that closing number of about 9.5 or so, as Northwestern, they go 7-22 from 3, and they hold Michigan to shooting just 7 of 27 from the outside, but Michigan goes 29 of 37 at the free throw line, and they won the battle on the glass with regards to offensive rebounds. 13 offensive rebounds to Northwestern's 11. Northwestern actually loses the turnover battle 14-11, and that's what's been hurting Michigan all season long. The turnovers, as Vladislav Golden went into takeover mode in this game, 31 points, 4 blocks. Meanwhile, you had Nick Martinelli, Brooks Barnheiser combined for 41 points to keep Northwestern lively in that one. Illinois versus Michigan State ended up being a classic. If you laid the 1.5 late with Michigan State, you got there. If you took north of 2.5 early on with Illinois, as that was the number for most of the night into the early AM, you got there as well. 80-78, the final is Illinois just 5 of 24 from three-point range. Kasparis Jakusinhas, he was only out there for 9 minutes because he fouled out of this game. He did have 3 points while he was out there, but only had 3 points in this game. Meanwhile, for Kylan Boswell, 5 turnovers, 9 rebounds, 13 points. He had an up and down sort of game, as for Michigan State, they did win the turnover battle by a count of 10-8, and they had Trey Holloman step up in this game. 17 points, as for Michigan State, they go 21 of 27 at the free throw line, 17 of 27 for Illinois. That turned out to be a big difference in this game. For Memphis, they get the win, but no cover against Charlotte, as they were a double-figure favorite, 77-68, the final for Memphis. They have been ailed by turnovers throughout the season, and that was once again the reason why they didn't cover this game. They lost the turnover battle 16-12, but they won the rebound battle 42-28. They've had a little bit of a tough time on the glass with PJ Haggerty, 18 points, and for Memphis, they go 10 of 25 from 3, 9 of 28 for Charlotte. But you did have Jashawn Thomas for the Charlotte team be able to supply the team with 18 points. And then you saw a ranked team go down at home, Baylor. Now 6 losses already this season. They lose to TCU this by a count of 74-71, and it has been a less than savory against the spread season thus far for Baylor. It's now against the spread thus far this season. They're checking in 6-9-1. TCU just 6-11 against the spread, but still they were able to get it done in this game as they go 7 of 18 from 3-point range. Baylor does go 9 of 25 from 3, but they also went 12 of 18 at the free throw line. They allowed TCU a late shot to be able to get it done, and TCU wins this game despite losing the turnover battle 17-5, and the reason why they won the rebound battle 41-25. All Nojad Omier had 20 points. He only had 5 rebounds, and Ernest Uday was able to win this game by himself pretty much. 16 points, 15 rebounds, and for Vishawn Elouette, he was trying for a double-double. 13 points, 9 turnovers in this game. So TCU finds a way there, and then for UW Green Bay, they get a cover. Now, they set a new program record for losing streak for 14 straight up, but they are now 6-13 against the spread. So yay, verily. Youngstown State, they get the win by a count of 73-69, and really the lone reason why UW Green Bay covered this game is that they had a hot shooting day, as UW Green Bay took 22 fewer field goal attempts than Youngstown State. They did get 8 more free throw attempts, and they went 25 of 30 at the line, 6 of 13 from three-point range, and Youngstown State just 6 of 26 from three, but Youngstown State clearly controlled this game. They were able to win the rebound battle 30-25. They won the turnover battle as well, 16-7. So a lot of, shall we say, strife with regards to this UW Green Bay team. Florida Atlantic has been one of the more rambunctious offenses in all of college basketball, one of the lesser defenses in all of college basketball, and they do find a way to get the job done against Rice after trailing at the half, but it was not comfortable. 75-73, the final, as Rice got up 14 points in this game, and for Rice, they were actually leading by 7+ points with about 3 minutes and change remaining, but just unable to pull this one out, as Florida Atlantic, they go just 6 of 21 from three, while Rice won 13 of 25 from three, but Florida Atlantic won the turnover battle and the rebound battle, winning the turnover battle 10-6, 40-35 on the glass as well. That was a pretty fun one. You did see Cleveland State find a way to persevere and get the job done against IU Indianapolis as well. IU Indy has actually been able to cover some numbers thus far this season. 73-62 final in this one, as IU Indy does go 9 of 25 from three-point range. What doomed them was the turnovers. They lose the turnover battle 15-11, and for Cleveland State, 16 out of 19 at the free throw line. IU Indy 19 out of 30 at the free throw line, as for IU Indy, they actually had a lead in the early part of the second half in this one, and then unfortunately that faded into the abyss for them. And if you're taking a look at the Horizon League, your top over team out there in the Horizon League has actually been Robert Morris. They're up to 13 overs to 6 unders, and they win on the road against UW Milwaukee. It's about 9.5 or so point underdogs, 81-79 the final, is for Robert Morris, 10 of 23 from three-point range. Cam Woods was able to put in there 15 points, and all 5 starters had 12+ points in this one. Michael Stillwell, Dolly Kidd for UW Milwaukee with 26 points, but UW Milwaukee loses that turnover battle 19-15, so a little bit of a rough state of affairs there. And getting back to Youngstown State now, 12 unders, 5 overs to a push thus far this season for them as well. So they've been playing some very overwhelming games, and UMass has been overwhelmingly rough against the spread this far this season, but they do get a triumph against LaSalle, as they do find a way to be able to get the job done by a count of 82-60, as for LaSalle, it's been an up-down all-around sort of season for them, and for this LaSalle team, they lose the rebound battle by a count of 53-37, 13 rebounds and 9 points out of Jaden Najib. Hopefully I said that correctly. And then you were able to get off the bench Daniel Hankins-Sanford for 10 points, 9 rebounds in this one, as UMass now against the spread sitting there at actually 9-9. I thought that they were actually much worse against the spread than what they were, because they're just 8-11 straight up. But that said, it's been a little bit of a strange season for them. And then you did see Temple be able to get a win, but no cover against Tulane. This by a count of 80-77 being that final, as for Temple, they were able to do a relatively rock-solid job of getting Jamal Mashburn Jr. He had 32 points in this one, goes 12 of 16 from the floor, and Tulane loses this game despite the fact that they went 12 of 20 from three-point range. They were able to get a nice performance out of Rome Brumba, 20 points, but unable to win the rebound battle. They lost that battle 33-20. They actually win the turnover battle 15-13, but second and third chances, able to get Temple to the window on this one, and for Tulane, 7 of 12 at the free throw line as well, as free throws were very key in terms of the games on Sunday. And if you're looking at trend-wise, what we're getting in college basketball, it's been very interesting with the underdogs cashing all season long. Underdogs right now hitting at darn near 51%, 1,550, 1,496, and 43 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs and unders are about as even as it gets, 1,525 overs to 1,521 unders, so a 50.1% hit rate to the over. But if you look at what we've seen over the last 7 days in college basketball, the past week, it has been very much an underdog week. 176, 154, and 5 against the spread for dogs, 53.3%. Meanwhile, the totals, they continue to be as even as it gets, 168 overs to 166 unders. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now, let's turn it forward to what we're going to be seeing this week and get some of the reaction of our good friend Rob Donaldson, who does a tremendous job handicapping this great game of college basketball. He's up next right here on Coast to Get Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VEASAN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by this man as we've got Rob Donaldson aboard. He does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. I know that he's been doing an absolutely amazing job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at RobDFB altogether. And Rob, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Greg. And we're going into Monday here, and the national title is happening in college football. So college football is coming to an end. The NFL playoffs are kind of nearing the end as well, and it's college basketball right now in the sports world. And the NBA, if you're kind of into that front, I'm personally not. This is full steam ahead, and we've got some really great basketball to talk about as well.
Oh, we certainly do. And just what have been some of the things that you've been picking up on the last few weeks in general? Because it's been a topsy-turvy last few weeks in college basketball where there hasn't been like a real trend of like favorites, underdogs, anything like that. And it just feels like there have been some individual teams in general that have stepped up and some other teams that seem to be regressing a little bit.
Well, one of the angles that we talked about last time I hopped on the podcast, I think it was like last Tuesday or last Sunday potentially, but we kind of brought up the point of, this demonstrative home advantage and home court advantage that we were seeing in college basketball in the early going. And this is really the flow of the season every single year. It starts to dissipate a little bit because now these teams are settled into who they are and they understand that going on the road is a different environment. They have to bring their A game. And, on Saturday, we saw Wisconsin going to USC, win by 15. We saw Santa Clara win as an outright 15-point underdog. We saw Ole Miss go to Mississippi State, put on a fight there. Creighton won outright. Houston nearly lost, but, ended up getting it done against a good UCF team. Xavier over Marquette. There's a million different teams that kind of went on the road and showed that although the home environment, is a factor, it's not the end-all be-all. And again, I don't think that the demonstrative edge is still there with a lot of these home court teams.
And I'm so glad that you bring that up. How much easier do you think it's been for these teams from the Midwest and the East Coast going west rather than the teams going from west to east? Because the teams like UCLA, USC, who you just mentioned, they had a really brutal time when they went on the road and they had to play out there on the East Coast and in the Midwest. But we've noticed these teams that have went out to the West Coast have had a lot more success, in my opinion.
I do think context matters a little bit there, just because UCLA and USC aren't the cream of the crop when it comes to college basketball or even the Big Ten just in general. And, we did just see Iowa kind of get shellacked in both of those matchups against USC and against UCLA. But, to your point, we've seen Illinois go out there. We've seen Wisconsin go out there now and just play like it's a normal neutral court or kind of a nullified home court environment because Wisconsin's the better team and Illinois is the better team. And I do think that's going to continue to be a trend. And I think that's kind of where you have to apply context. But even Stanford, if you're looking at the ACC, went all the way to North Carolina and won that game outright as a 12-point dog on Saturday. So I do feel like what we're learning about these West Coast to East Coast matchups and vice versa is, hey, it might play a factor, but it's not an end-all, be-all sort of factor there.
No doubt about it. I'm so glad that you brought up that game that we saw with Stanford versus North Carolina. It's joining me on the show. We do have Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And just what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for out of some of these teams? Because what has been off-putting for me about North Carolina has been this bunch and the way that they just don't have a lot of rebounding in general. They don't have much post play. And I think that's really interesting to take a look at some of these characteristics of teams, because another thing that I've been looking at is these teams like Cal State Fullerton has been a prime example that doesn't have a point guard and just fading the heck out of those teams that they don't have that main facilitator, and these teams like in North Carolina that they just don't have a single guy that's really able to protect things down low.
And with North Carolina, and I think we're going to start to really, really see this become even more prevalent is, you look at their roster and who they roll out there, and it's a lot of freshmen, it's a lot of younger guys, and then they obviously have RJ Davis in the fold who kind of provides that quote-unquote veteran leadership or that veteran stability. But ultimately, this is a team that really didn't attack the portal head on and kind of dive into that sphere. They're just relying on, hey, we've got a brand kind of like a Duke or a Kentucky where we can go into those high school ranks and we can pull out the best of the best and still try to use the same formula that has created success for them over time. And I feel like that's a way of the past, because I think you got to be balanced. I think that's ultimately what failed Coach Cal at Kentucky over the last few years, just not having a team that had that veteran stability that you can go out and acquire now from the portal. So because of that, I think that's what's getting exposed is although it's nice to have those talented freshmen and to pull those guys from the high school ranks, it's going to be tough sledding if that's what you're ultimately relying on there.
And I am so glad that you mentioned Arkansas as well, because, man, have things been rough for them out there in the SEC. And just what do you make out of them and the entirety of the SEC? Because, as we know, the SEC, night in, night out, it is a gauntlet, even with Arkansas. And it's not a night off by any stretch of the imagination, but they and South Carolina have fallen in the abyss in what has been just a brutal SEC, as the two of us right now have as many wins in conference play as Arkansas does, and we don't coach college basketball.
And even when Arkansas did step out of the SEC, they have a win over Michigan. It's not like this team is a Miami level of bad where, both of those teams are right. Both of those teams are winless in their conference. But again, apply some context. Miami is a dead in the water team, and Arkansas, as bad as they are kind of a product of the conference that they're playing in more so than the talent that they actually have. Because if we stick them in the ACC, I think they're arguably a top 5 team in that league. And that's saying a lot about how good the SEC is this year, especially when you have teams like Vanderbilt, who are 15-3, beating Tennessee. You have a Missouri Tigers team that's already beat Kansas and beat Florida in Gainesville. And those were teams that were kind of at the bottom of this league over the past, a long time. Even Georgia, right? They just put Auburn down to the wire. They're ranked. They're probably going to be a tourney-bound team. A lot of these kind of basement fillers in the SEC that have been in those solidified positions year in and year out are now kind of breaking through, and I feel like that's just showing how great this league actually is this season.
If you ask me, it actually shows how bad the ACC is as well. As joining me on the show, we do have Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bet Show. Joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, like we saw it over the weekend. Duke was laying 23.5 points in a road conference game. They were just barely able to cover it against Boston College, but how do we take a look at the ineptitude of the ACC? Because it's Duke and it's really everyone else. I sort of like what I'm seeing out of Clemson. I think SMU can provide some promise. I think that they were made to look a little bit better against Miami than what they truly are. But it's an ACC that they should honestly be fortunate that SMU bought their way in, because right now they're helping save a little bit of the conference, because outside of Duke, I've just not been impressed by anyone in that conference.
And we talked about this, I think, a few weeks back, but you look at the coaches that have vacated this league over the last 5 seasons, and it's crazy, right? You got Tony Bennett, Mike Bray, Jim Boeheim, Coach K, Roy Williams, and I'm sure I'm missing some other guys as well. And now Syracuse is kind of going through it, and Virginia's going through it, Miami's going through it, Notre Dame is kind of up and down. They've had a lot of injuries, but yeah, to your point, this league is not appealing, and I would say it's even below, a conference like the A10, if I'm even comparing it to that type of league, or Mountain West. Like I think it's in more of that tier rather than the high majors of, kind of what we understand them to be. And when you're looking at that top of league, I don't think it's a coincidence that, a blue blood like Duke is spearheading it, but then you look at, the Steve Forbes and the Pat Kelseys of the world, and they are the kind of the next in line of who the best teams in this conference is. I think that speaks a lot about the ACC's talent right now.
Yeah, the ACC just seems to be so far down right now, and a team in particular that's standing out to me is Miami, because I just still can't remember the last time I've seen a team flat out quit in the month of January, and I don't want to use that term. I want to do everything humanly possible not to, but I just have not seen situations before in college basketball like we're seeing in 2 particular ones, Miami and UW Green Bay, albeit UW Green Bay, it still feels like it's still given a little bit of an effort, but their coach hasn't been all in all season long, but it feels like these 2 teams have quit, and even though UW Green Bay got that cover on Sunday, I think that was just very fortunate shooting, and that was a little bit of a one-off, and these are teams I'm very much looking to fade right now, even as the numbers become inflated, because I don't think that the bookmakers can account for something like quitting, because that's just something that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. It doesn't necessarily show up with regards to metrics, but I feel like it's very much happening with those programs.
100%. I mean, Najee Pack hasn't played a game since December.
He's packed it in.
Yeah, exactly. Great call, Greg. Yeah, he's packed it in, and their head coach, as much as we love him, and he's a legendary coach for George Mason and for Miami, and he brought Miami to a lot of relevance, and even just the past 5 seasons, he literally quit on this team midway through the season because he kind of saw the writing on the wall.
He blamed NIL, even though that brought Miami the Final Four, so he was a big giant hypocrite about it too.
Right, they're not relevant if they're just relying on the high school ranks for the Final Four run. It's just one of those things that when it's obvious of a quitting situation and players are literally quitting, it just speaks volumes. And to your point, Miami is still a team that has talent. And so these bookmakers setting a line like 5.5 for SMU just to see a 60-20 first half really tells you all you need to know about kind of the confusion of how to handicap these teams. Do you want to jump in the foxhole with Miami at a certain point? Like, is there a buy point? I have no clue because I'm not sure there's a bottom.
Yeah, and I am right there with you because I do always think that there's a buy point and a sell point with the team, but with UW Green Bay, even though, like I said, they were able to cover on Sunday, again, they had to shoot 45.5% from three. They lost the turnover battle. They lost the offensive rebound battle. You play that game 10 times over, that's probably the only one out of the 10 that they cover, in my opinion, with how well they shot it from three-point range. And that's a team I want no part of. I want no part of Miami as well. And that is really standing out to me because we just have not seen situations like this in past years. And are there other things that have been a little bit of one-offs this season? Because I just mentioned it. I just can't remember seeing a situation quite as badly as those two teams. But are there other things that are standing out to you that you just haven't seen in past years that you're seeing right now?
There's a number of different things with just the conference realignment factor that, we kind of talked about it with like Purdue going out to the West Coast and all these teams going out to the West Coast from a far east centered school and just kind of seeing how they perform. But I think we're also kind of seeing a number of different leagues this season that they have really no solidified top team. And one of the conferences that we highlighted in the offseason was the Big East, because I didn't think that UConn was going to be far away, the UConn team of the past 2 years. And when that happens, it opens a door. And then Marquette really hasn't been able to capitalize just yet. They just lost to Xavier at home. And so it's now, St. John's in the mix. But, look out for Creighton, right? They've dealt with injuries. They haven't played their best ball. They obviously started the season very, very slow. But McDermott is a fantastic coach. They just beat UConn. They only have 2 losses in the league. And ultimately, if you're one of those kind of sports bettors that wants to box score handicap or standings handicap, don't look at the overall win-loss record. That's pretty much irrelevant because of what happens in non-con and these MTEs. Look at the conference record because that's more up-to-date. That's more telling of how a team is kind of rolling right now within that league. And when the coaches are hyping up their teams and kind of forecasting and trying to motivate, they're not saying, "Oh, we're 12-6." No, they're saying we're 5-2 or 6-1 in conference play, and everything is in front of us to play for.
And I think that's so interesting that you bring that up because I think that it is important with regards to non-conference play to not so much look at the win-loss record, but look at who you played as well. Like, I'm always bullish on Alabama because you know that year in and year out, they're going to schedule one of the toughest non-conference schedules in all of college basketball. Michigan State, they were able to get the job done against Illinois on Sunday. They're a team that they always are willing to play anyone at any given time. And I'll give a little bit of respect to Duke as well. They used to always suck teams under Coach K. They've been a little bit more willing to book those road games here in the last few years as well. And I feel like these are the teams that are right now being rewarded. The teams that played a tough non-conference schedule, while the teams that were playing against the Cream Puffs, I'm looking at you, the likes of Cincinnati, Baylor, what have you, have been the teams that have faded into the abyss.
And those are the teams that kind of have faded into the abyss of a good non-con slate and had that little glossy record going into conference play. I feel like those are the types of teams that they already kind of knew what was going to happen. And that's why they did go out there and schedule these Cream Puffs, because they want to pad their resume. Everybody wants to be part of March. And ultimately, the reality of that fact is it doesn't matter if you're 24-9 at the end of the season. If you don't have any marquee wins and you're dropping games in conference plays to the likes of, a 50th or 60th or 70th ranked type team, then you're going to suffer at the hands of the resume to a team with only 19 or 20 wins. That's just the reality of it. I do think that's a short-sighted thing on behalf of a lot of these programs and a lot of these coaches when they're kind of formulating their schedules.
No doubt about it. And Rob, we do have ourselves a really nice slate that is going to be coming up for Monday as well. It is MLK Day, so you got a lot of schools that are off and a lot of schools decide, hey, you know what, let's schedule a game for Monday, which looks a lot better than what we got on Sunday, where the last game tipped off at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And still grinds my gears, to say the least. But that said, I think that you are going to be taking a look at with regards to this Monday card.
There's a lot of great games, and I will say there's a lot of great games for programs that deserve more eyes, and we finally have day basketball. It's fantastic when it lines up that way, but I'm going to look at a game at noon. It's going to be, I think, one of the best games, if not the best game on the card for Monday, and that's UNC Wilmington taking on William and Mary. And it's kind of one of those things that we just talked about where conference record is all that matters. And William and Mary, despite an 11-7 overall record, is 5-0 in the CAA, and UNC Wilmington has a chance to kind of get one back here at 3-2 in the CAA. I feel like they are going to get that back, and 5.5 is one of those tricky lines that I really do personally hate laying, but I am willing to lay it here because I do feel like this is, again, if a coach is using it as a motivational tool, they're going to use that sort of conference record as that motivational tool, and I do think that UNCW is going to be able to go and win this thing by double digits here on Monday.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you on UNC Wilmington in that one as well. And how do you gauge this William and Mary team? Because one thing that I've picked up on this year is I've always felt like in college basketball, it's easier to slow a team down than it is to speed one up, but we've noticed that there have been a few teams, Cornell, Samford, Alabama, William and Mary, that have just had the uncanny ability to be able to speed anyone up as well. And Wilmington has not been an up-tempo team, but I could easily see an over here just with the way that William and Mary has been playing.
And especially with it being on UNCW's home court, and I really don't know what the fan turnout's going to be. Students are back on campus, but it's kind of an obscurely placed game at noon on a Monday. We'll see, but I do feel like UNC Wilmington will set the tone, and if they are scoring, William and Mary is going to be charged with keeping up, and whether or not they do, I think is the question, but to your point, I think UNCW could put up 80 points in this game, and that could easily lead to an over when you're talking about a 153 line. So I do like that over there on that angle, and again, I really love that -5.5 as well.
I'm right there with you, Rob. And Rob, we do have ourselves a great day of college basketball on Monday, and it's always a great day whenever we're able to get you aboard. Love the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Well, hey, always love hopping on to talk ball with you, Greg. And for those who want to follow my daily bets, you can do so on my YouTube channel, which is my name, just Rob Donaldson, and also on my Twitter/X feed at RobDFB. But as always, Greg, I appreciate having me on, man.
Always appreciate Rob. He does such a great job handicapping this great game of college basketball, and every single time he joins me, lends such great insight. So big thanks to Rob for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Rob Donaldson, who does great work with the show/podcast, Rob's Best Bets. Every single time he joins me, lends such great insights, and did so once again today. So big thanks to Rob for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNet_D1. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in the bigger conferences first, and then these are the conferences that are going to be at the bottom. You got the Patriot League, the NEC, the America East, the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, and then if we had any big South action, that would be down there as well. And if I didn't say Southland, Southland too. But that said, how about if we do get things started with 871, 872 on the card? It is UNC Wilmington, and they play also William and Mary. You don't just get William, you don't just get Mary, you get both, and with America's favorite tag team, you're catching between 5 and 5.5 points. Tonight's game is between 153 to 153.5. I'm going to be willing to go over in this spot. I did set my total at a 156.5. You've got a William and Mary team that has really hiked up their tempo. Last year, they were outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. This year, you've got a William and Mary team that is checking in the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game, so they have certainly been running it and gunning it compared to what we saw from a season ago. But this is also a William and Mary team that I wish I could put it any other way. They've been pretty deplorable with regards to their defensive effort. They did a much better job a few days ago against Hampton, but right now they are outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And you have seen this UNC Wilmington team actually do a better job with their defense this season. They're still outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's been getting quite a bit better with that regard. But I do like what I'm seeing out of this Wilmington team, and I'm going to be willing to lay it because the team has been able to do a much better job down low than they did a season ago. Harlan Obiana has stepped into the program. He's been able to give them as a true 7-footer, 6+ rebounds per game. And then you've got Nolan Ross, who's been able to come in. He's been able to give you about 6 rebounds. He was a little bit banged up, but I should be able to win the battle because really, other than Noah Collier, who was able to give you 5.5 rebounds per game for this William & Mary team, you don't have a ton of size. And they do bring in Coach Earl, who I always have liked what he's been able to do over at Cornell. His style is very much predicated on being able to play up tempo, generate some turnovers, but they just haven't generated those turnovers. And also 3-point shooting, which they shoot up as a collective about 35% from 3-point. Kyle Pulliam has been able to give you 10.5 points. He's been shooting 37% from 3, like what Gabe Dorsey brings to the table. He's been able to shoot about 42% from 3-point. And with Pulliam, he was dealing with a little bit of injury towards the beginning part of the season. Being able to get him back in the fold a few days ago, I feel like is going to be very big for this team and their overall offensive punch. But that said, on the flip side, I do think that with Wilmington, even though this has been a team that has been shooting less than 32% from 3-point, they're going to be able to find some good, clean, open looks here, as you've been able to have Donovan Newby throw in there about 16 points per contest. Past that, you got a little bit of a holes greater than some of its parts backcourt with like Josh Corbin thrown in there, 8 points per contest. Bo Montgomery has been able to give you 7 as well. But these are guys that are used to being go-to scorers over at their previous stop. This has been a Wilmington team that has been a top 125 team with regards to their rebound rate. And when you go up against a William & Mary team that is allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point in that neighborhood about 33+%, I do think that they're going to be able to get going just a little bit more in this game. And I do think that you get an up and down game. Some I tell 156F and on the over, willing to lay up to 6 here with Wilmington. 873, 874 on the betting board. The Quakers of Penn, they're on the road. They're facing up against Harvard. And the Spartans of Harvard are a 7-point favorite. It's on this game between 139.5 to a 140. And I'm in on the under. I did set my total more around a 134, mainly because neither of these teams have gotten a lot going on offense. I recognize that you've got a pair of teams outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis as well, but this has been a Penn team that has seen a big giant departure with their 3-point shooting. Typically, Penn is one of your better mid-major teams at being able to stroke it from 3-point range. Right now this season, they are 330th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. In a road/switch court venue, they're shooting just 27.8% from 3-point range. And for this Harvard team and all the warts that they do have a guy that's very versatile in Chandler Piggy, who's able to give you about 2.5 assists, 12 points, 7 rebounds per game. I like what he brings to the table, and this has been a top 150 unit in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line. Now, is a Penn team that, while they've been bad offensively, they've also been pretty bad defensively. They are 337th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so that's been a little bit less than savory, and you just have seen a departure with regards to a lot of the guys that return for Penn. One of their main returners in Nick Spinoza has been able to do a solid job. He had 6'8", gives you some nice versatility, 7 boards, 13 points, 3.5 assists per contest, but last year Sam Brown was shooting well north of 40% from 3. He's shooting 24.5% from 3-point with 8.5 points per contest this season. And for this Harvard unit, having back Evan Nelson after he missed all of last season has been pretty big for them. He's been able to supply them with about 8 points per contest, and Louis Lesman was out for a little bit of time this year. He's been able to come back, and he's been able to give you some versatility as well. He throws in there about 9 points per contest. Not shooting it amazing from 3. This Harvard team as a whole, they only shoot about 32.5% from the outside, and with this Harvard team, they have been relatively rough on the glass. They are outside the top 225 with regards to rebound percentage, and in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, they're clocking in more in that neighborhood about 300th, but not like this Penn team is doing a whole heck of a lot better on the glass. As a matter of fact, they've got a worse rebound rate, and with Penn being outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, that should allow for some good, clean, flowing offense for this Harvard team. So I did set Harvard as an 8-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 7 and made my total 134. I'm in on the under. 875, 876 on the betting board. Dartmouth is on the road against Yale. Yale's a 15.5 to a 16-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 150. Did set my total 147. I'm going to be in on the under. We have seen this Yale team play a little bit more up-tempo this season. They're about 187th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, which typically they're well outside the top 200, but this has been a Yale team that has been very efficient with their offense. Top 30 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Team that's in the top 25 with their 38.5% 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that we might see a little bit of regression there. I do think that both of these teams are going to start to step it up a little bit more defensively. This has been a Yale team that this season has been still a top 125 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're also giving up darn near are 21.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside-shoot court environment. And this has been a Dartmouth team that it's not an amazing defense, but they're a top 175 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So do you think that we've gone a scotch too far there? And for Dartmouth, I've been liking what I've been seeing out of Brandon Mitchell today. Guy stands right around about 6'8". He'll supply you with 10 plus points. He'll throw in there a few boards as well. And Ryan Cornish, I have to think, was dealing with like some sort of an injury last year, because 2 years ago he was pretty rock solid. Last year he was terrible, and he's come back with a vengeance this year. 16 points, 5 boards. He's throwing in there a few assists, 2 steals per game, shooting 35.5% from 3. And Dartmouth as a whole shooting 36.5% from 3-point range, and they love to gun it from 3. They are taking north of 47% of their shot attempts from 3-point range. That's a top 75 mark in terms of just 3-point rate percentage of your shots that come from 3. And this has been a Dartmouth team that, to their credit, they don't allow for a lot of offensive rebounding opportunities. Now, they themselves are not a team that's going to be able to generate a lot of second and third chances. They are well outside the top 300 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but they're doing a nice job of holding teams. So a one-and-done possession for Dartmouth. They're actually 8th in the country in terms of their defensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, Nick Townsend for Yale has been very rock solid for the team. He's been able to supply you with 6+ rebounds. He's thrown in there 14+ points per game. And then additionally, John Paul Kiddis has been that main man. He's been able to give you 20 points per game. He continues to shoot 44% from 3-point range and nearly 89% at the charity stripe. Yale does a good job being able to keep things clean with regards to their possessions, only about 11 turnovers per game as well. You also have in the backcourt Baz Embeg, who's been able to give out nearly 6 assists per contest, albeit it does come with about 3.5 turnovers per game. But Casey Simmons, the transfer from Northwestern, is able to shoot 43% from 3. But I do think that with both of these teams are going to step up just a little bit more with regards to defense. Both of these teams do a good job of not allowing a second chance opportunity as well. So I did set my total at 147. I'm in on the under. I do think that Dartmouth has a chance to be able to hold in there. I'm only taking anything north of 15 with Dartmouth to go along with the under. 877, 878 on the betting board. It is Columbia, and they're on the road against Princeton. Princeton is a favorite of 7.5 points. Drawing this game, you're going to be finding it at a 153.5, and I do like what Princeton has been running on offense, but again, I feel like we went too far with this one. I did set my line at 4.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Columbia. The lifeblood of this Columbia team truly is 3-point shooting, as they've got Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa, who's been able to give you 18+ points, throws in there 3 assists. He's been able to shoot in the low 40s with regards to percentage from 3-point range, but I mean, this is a Columbia team that, as a whole, they are shooting about 38.5% from 3-point range. They're in the top 25 nationally, and it travels relatively well. They shoot about 36% from 3-point range in a roadside-shoot court venue. This has been a Princeton team that they themselves are shooting about 37.5% from 3. Actually dips to about 35.5% from 3 when they're at home. And for Princeton, they are playing quite a bit faster this year than they did a season ago. Last year, they were outside the top 330 in terms of total possessions, bringing more in the low 200s this season. And once again, it's a very top-heavy team with this Princeton team, with having Xavier Lee be that do-it-all guy. 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists, 17 points per game, shoots 39.5% from 3. And for this Princeton team, you really have, I would say, 5 main contributors for the team. Dalen Davis, Caden Pierce, these 2 guys give you 11.5 points per contest apiece. Pierce has been your main rebounder with 7 boards, 3 assists per contest. Blake Peters has stepped up with about 9 points per contest, and then Philip Burrell is now shooting about 40% from 3. Throws in there a few boards, 6.5 points per game, but it is a team that they really don't go deep into their bench. But on the flip side, I do think that with this Columbia team and having all the versatility that they do, especially down low, because the one thing that Princeton is never going to do is generate a lot of second chances. They're outside the top 300 with regards to their defensive rebound rate. Now, they themselves, much like Dartmouth, they're a team that they don't allow for a lot of second and third chance opportunities on the glass as well. This is a Princeton team that, in terms of defensive rebound percentage, they've been a top 75 team in all of college basketball, so they're going to be able to keep you off the boards there. But for Columbia, you also do have some versatility with this team. Blair Thomas is able to give you double figures at 6'8". He's been able to haul in their 5+ rebounds per game, shoots it relatively well from 3-point range. It is a Columbia team that has been relinquishing some second chances on the glass. About 28.5% of opponents' missed shots do result in an offensive rebound, but you still do have a little bit more size as well. You've got the 6'10" international man of mystery and Zadou Ini Badri, who's been able to give you about 7 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And then I like what I'm seeing out of Kenny Dolan in the backcourt as well. 13.5 points, main facilitator with about 3.5 assists per game, shoots 43.5% from 3-point range. It's a Columbia team that they themselves are outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but it's not like this Princeton team has been anything amazing with regards to their perimeter defense either. Princeton at home, allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range, so I do think that both of these teams take a lot of threes. I do feel like Princeton is starting starting to dial it back just a little bit with regards to that tempo. Columbia not a team that's necessarily going to run it and gun it, but I do think that you get some good clean offense here. Just think that with regards to total amount of possessions, it comes up just a little bit short. Set my total 152.5, so you're at the 153.5 in on the under. And I do like 5+ here with Columbia right now sitting at 7.5. 879, 880 on the betting board. Cornell plays us to Brown. What can Brown do for you? Well, if they lose by fewer than 8 points, or 8 points or fewer, I should say, they are going to make you money as they are 8.5 point underdogs. The last game is 155.5, and did set my number at 7.5. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Brown. Now, this is a Cornell team that they absolutely love to pop it from three-point range. And this has been a Cornell team that, despite the fact that they lose Coach Earl in the offseason, they did a nice job of keeping it in-house with John Jacques, who was part of that Sweet 16 team for Cornell many years ago, taking over, running the exact same styles. Right now, you've got 4 separate guys that give you double figures. Check that, 5 separate guys that give you double figures. Nazir Williams, A.K. Okereke, Jake Fegan, Guy Ragland, Lon Cooper, Nolan, with really nobody other than Ragland give you north of 4.5 rebounds per game, but it's a whole is greater than some of its parts approach on the glass. 4 of your top 5 scorers have been able to give you at least 3.8 rebounds per game, and this is a team that really does a great job of popping it from three-point range. Out of your top 5 scorers, all but 2 of them are shooting north of 40% from three-point range, and all but 1 of them shooting at least 35.3% from three-point range, with the only exception being Okereke, who's been your main facilitator. 4.2 assists at 2.1 turnovers per game. Now, Cornell not generating as many turnovers as they have in past years, and this has been a unit that has been a little bit disjointed with regards to just the defense in terms of being able to guard the perimeter themselves, as they're allowing opponents to shoot right around 35% from three-point range, but they're also number 1 in the country in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. Like, we all emphasize the fact that Cornell takes and hits a whole bunch of threes, but this team shoots darn near 64% from two-point range as well, but I do think that Brown is going to be able to do a solid job holding up down low, even with Nana Owusu-Onane out for the season. They've had Landon Lewis, Aaron Cooley really step up. These 2 guys have been able to give you darn near 14 rebounds per game, and Keno Lilly is just the best individual scorer in this game, shooting 42% from 3 at 9 threes per contest, 19 points, 4 assists per game. Brown does need to clean up the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over about 13 times per contest, but I do think that this is a team that's a little bit better on the glass. Cornell not necessarily a team that's going to foul a ton, which isn't a bad thing, because Brown shoots 64.5% the free throw line. That is outside the top 340 in all of college basketball, so that's been a little bit of an issue for them, and Brown certainly has had their warts with regards to their defense. They've been outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that Brown going to do an okay job of being able to guard the three-point arc here, as this Brown team has been allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from 3. They're top 1 mark in all of college basketball in that regard. I think that three-point shooting defense going to be able to keep them lively in this game, so I did set my mark at a 7.5 in this one. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Brown, and I do think that you're going to see quite a few sunk threes in this game. I do think that Brown going to be able to generate some second and third chances on the glass and get sped up a little bit more. Set my total 157.5. I like the over, and I do like the points here with Brown. 881, 882 on the betting board. Drexel is playing against Hofstra, and the pride of Hofstra are an underdog of 2.5 points, and your total is 122.5. I'm going to be willing to go over, but I can't say that I set a high total myself. I set the total more around a 124.5, so I do think that we've gone just a little bit too far. This has been a Hofstra team, though, that is outside the top 290 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I did write this up. I wrote up Drexel laying the number. Drexel is a top 115 unit in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're back in the top 75 with regards to rebound percentage, as well as I think that Drexel is going to be able to control things down low, as they've gotten really good production. 10.5 points, 8.5 boards, a little bit over 2 assists per contest out of Colt Hargrave, and then you throw in there Yami Butler along with Kobe McGee, a pair of guys that have been able to combine for 29.5 points per contest, and McGee is right now shooting 44.5% from three-point range. You've got a Drexel team that has each of your top 4 scorers doling out at least 2 assists per game as well, so I mean, it's really been a by committee effort with that. Now, it is a Drexel team that's outside the top 225 in terms of ball security, and they're not going to put you under too much duress. This team is only generating about 9.5 turnovers per game. That's a bottom 25 mark in all of college basketball, but this is also a Hofstra team that's outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound percentage, and this is a Hofstra team that just has not done a great job of being able to guard the three-point arc themselves when they are at home. They're allowing opponents to shoot 34% from 3. That actually goes down to about 32.5% away from home, but Drexel takes away that three-point shot. Top 25 team in the country in terms of their three-point shooting defense, and As we know, with Hofstra, they're always built around their backcourt. They've done a little bit of a better job down low. You've had Michael Graham be able to step in. He's been able to give this team 6+ rebounds per game, but I mean, they really are built around Cruz Davis, Alongine, Amarujan. These two guys have been able to combine for 28 points per contest. They both shoot about 36 to 36.5% from three-point range, and both of you guys do shoot 76+% at the free throw line, but just don't have a ton down low for this team. For Hofstra, uncharacteristically, they're turning the ball over 12.5 times per game. They've actually been number 1 in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but they're giving it up from three-point range. Drexel, much improved from distance. I do think that that's going to be enough for them to get the job done on their home floor. So I did set Drexel as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it, and maybe my total 124.5. Do think that this is going to be a control game. Both of these teams outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, but I think that we just have went down a little bit too far with that total. So in on the over, and I'm in on Drexel. 883, 884 on the betting board. New Mexico is playing us for Fresno State, and Fresno State is an underdog of 19.5 to 20 points, and totals in the neighborhood of a 161.5 to a 162, and with Fresno State, I did set them as an underdog of 22 points. I am going to be willing to lay the number here with New Mexico. New Mexico has had their issues being able to guard the three-point line. They're outside the top 330 with this regard, but this has also been a Fresno State team that just has had inconsistencies with regards to their offense. Their three-point shooting since the beginning of the month of December, by the way, closer to about 34-35% from three. Overall for the season, they're shooting just 32% from the outside, but they've been better recently. Zayon Collins has been a big reason why. 13.5 points, he shoots 39.5% from three-point range, but this team has been pretty awful with regards to being able to glass, and Nelly Jr. Joseph should be able to win that battle as Fresno State outside the top 270 in terms of their rebound percentage, and you saw it the first time these two teams played. They gave up 103 points to New Mexico. They had a nice three-point shooting expose that allowed them to be able to hold in that game, but for New Mexico, they went on the road and they just completely punked them in that game. For New Mexico, they were able to get what they wanted inside, shooting 68% from inside the arc. Nelly Jr. Joseph had a double-double, and he's been able to give the team 10+ rebounds per game. He's been able to throw in there about 13 points per contest. True Washington is able to generate multiple steals per contest as well, and I do think that this is a Fresno State team that's prone to a few more turnovers in this game as well. Fresno State, the first time around, had 14 turnovers, and Van Mikkel Robinson be able to give you your versatility at just 6 points in the first game. Should be a little bit better here, as I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. Throwing in there 10.5 points, 6 boards, 3 assists per contest, but this is also a Fresno State team that they themselves are well outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and with New Mexico, you've got Donovan Dent, who's been a top 10 facilitator in all of college basketball this year. He's going out north of 7 assists per contest. He has been their main scorer, being able to supply about 18.5 points per contest, and then additionally, Mustafa Amzil provides good versatility at 6'10", 13 points per contest. Doesn't necessarily pop it well from three, but he's able to give you a little bit along the outside as well, and we saw on display a few days ago against Boise State just how good this home court advantage is in general for New Mexico. New Mexico has been a top 15 team in the country with regards to block shot percentage as well. You do have Amar Uyugard on the flip side for Fresno State. I've been liking what he's been able to provide for the team. He's thrown in their double figures from three-point range. He's been able to shoot somewhere in that neighborhood of only about 24.5% from the outside, though, and with this Fresno State team turning the ball over 13 times per contest, they themselves a top 125 team in generating turnovers on a per possession basis on defense, but they're also outside the top 320 with regards to their opponent's two-point shooting percentage. I do think that New Mexico going to gash them from the inside. New Mexico, top 10 team in the country with regards to total possessions per game. Fresno State, a top 45 team, so I do think that these two teams run it and gun it. I do like playing the number here with New Mexico. I think that they win by an even bigger margin than the first time around, and did set my total 162.5 at a 161.5 or less, and on the over, and I want to lay with New Mexico. 885, 886 on the betting board. Villanova is going to be playing us to Georgetown, and Georgetown is an underdog of 7.5 points. Tonight's game is a 135.5, opened up at a 136, but with Villanova, I did set them as a favorite of just 5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Georgetown. I really like what I've seen out of this Georgetown defense. They're now a top 25 unit in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and guy that I think is going to be able to keep them in this game is Thomas Sorber. Sorber has stepped in as a freshman, and he's been one of the more underrated players in college basketball this year, if you ask me. 14.5 points, 8.5 boards, 2.5 assists, 2.5 blocks per contest as well. Not a stretchable big man that's going to pop it from three, but has really done a nice job there. And then the two guys in the backcourt, Micah Peavy along with Malik Mack, These two guys have been able to combine for 8.5 assists per game. Now, the one thing that Georgetown does need to clean up is the turnovers. They've been turning the ball over 13.5 times per contest, outside the top 250 in terms of ball security, and this has been a Georgetown team that's been a little bit hit or miss with regards to the three-point shooting defense. Legitimately, both of these teams have been, though. This is a Georgetown unit that they're allowing opponents to shoot from three-point range in that neighborhood about 33.5%, though that goes down to 28.9% in a roadside-shoot court venue. Meanwhile, this Villanova team, they've been well outside the top 250 with this regard as well. Villanova right now allowing teams to shoot 36% from three-point range, goes down to about 34% at home, but they do currently have the nation's leader in scoring in Eric Dixon. He's been able to give you 25-plus points per contest, and Villanova, by no stretch of the imagination, has been some sort of an up-tempo team or anything like that. If you look at just raw possessions per game for Villanova, they're right now 348th in all of college basketball, but they've just been executing at a very high level. They don't turn the ball over all a lot. They only turn the ball over about 9.7 times per contest. Now they themselves outside the top 280 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but as a collective, they shoot north of 40% from three-point range, with Dixon leading the way, shooting 46.5% from three, 24.7 points, 5 boards per contest, and this has been a top 50 team with regards to rebound percentage, with Wooga Poplar along with Anyak Boyaki combined for 13 rebounds per game. Boyaki gives you nearly a block per contest as well, and then Jabari Breakus has been a big conduit in terms of facilitating good, clean offense, 5.5 assists, 11.5 points per contest, and he himself shoots 49.5% from three. But I do think that for Georgetown, they do a nice job on the glass. I do think that they're going to hold in here against the Villanova team that, once again, they have been outside the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So while they've been very efficient on offense, they've been a little bit inefficient on defense. I do like the outside shooting of Jaden Epps for this game as well. Jaden Epps for Georgetown has been able to play the team with about 13 points per contest from three-point. He's shooting about 39.5% from three. So circumstance where I set my number at 5. I'm going to take the points with Georgetown. I did set my total at 137. I do think that you can get some late game fouling. I do think that both of these teams execute relatively well on offense. So taking those points with Georgetown, and I'm in on the over. 887, 888 on the betting board. Rutgers is on the road against Penn State. Penn State is a favorite of between 6.5 to 7 points, and total on this game is between 157.5 to 158. And with Penn State, I did set them as a favorite of 7.5 points. Not willing to go past the 7, but I'm going to be willing to lay the 7. Penn State's still a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So we have seen them not generate as many turnovers here in conference play. It does feel like the familiarity of these teams with the style from a season ago is starting to take hold a little bit more, and Rutgers has done a nice job of being able to control the ball. This team is only turned the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. With their tempo, they're a top 75 team in terms of protecting it, but Rutgers still outside the top 75 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and it is an incredibly top-heavy team. While Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper are amazing, these two guys are combining for 39.5 points per contest. Bailey shooting 36.5% per three, and Harper was dealing with an injury about 2 weeks ago. He has looked very good in the last 2 games, being able to contribute double figures. So it gives you 4.5 assists, 5 rebounds per game. So he looks right. Who else is going to be able to step up for the team? Jeremiah Williams is the only other player that gives you north of 7 points per contest, and he's at 7.3 points per game. Lathon Somerville has been able to give you about 4 rebounds per game, and Jordan Durcock is a little bit of stat sheet sufferer. Throws in there like 4 boards, pair of assists, a steal per contest, what have you, but you just need a little bit more, in my opinion, on some of these guys. Ty Acuff has been able to give you a bit more scoring recently, but on the flip side for Penn State, even though this has been a team that's been struggling with their three-point shot, especially Ace Baldwin, he still does a nice job facilitating good, clean offense. For Baldwin, he only shoots about 28.5% from three, but 14 points, 8 assists, 2 steals per game, and then Zachary Hicks has been able to shoot 43.5% from three-point range. Be that mean outside shooter for a team that overall shoots about 34% from three-point range. This has been a Penn State team that has been much different when they've been at home rather than on the road, with regards to their defense scoring well north of 12 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than on the road. And then with this Penn State team, they've really cleaned up their act with regards to the glass as well. The team is a much better rebound rate team at home. On the road, they allow opponents to be able to grab a rebound on about 31.4% of their missed shots. At home, that's less than 25%. Meanwhile, this has been a Rutgers team that has been allowing way more second and third chances than what you'd imagine. This is a Rutgers team that, with regards to defensive rebound rate, is outside the top 145. Just not a Rutgers team that you're used to seeing. And away from home, they allow opponents to grab 35% of their missed shots. As an offensive rebound, 7-footer Yannick Korn-Niederhauser, I think is going to have a big game in this one. Nearly 2.5 blocks, 12 points, 6.5 rebounds. So I've been liking what I've been seeing out of him. Again, need a little bit more from the outside as Nicholas Kern, Puff Johnson, Freddie De Leon. These guys all give you between 10 and 12.5 points per contest. None of these guys shoot above 32.5% from three-point range, but the ability for Penn State to be able to generate turnovers against a Rutgers team that they've been outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Do you think it's going to win out here? Penn State has been a top 50 team with regards to their tempo, and this has been a Rutgers team that in a road/neutral environment has been in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game as well. Did semi-total at a 157.5. Starting to see 158 out there. I think that gets just a scotch too high at a 158 or higher in on the under, but one way up to 7 here with Penn State. 889, 890 on the betting board. Hampton is on the road against North Carolina A&T. A&T is a home underdog between 2.5 to 3 points. Thoughts game between 145.5 to a 146, and I made A&T the 1 point favorite. I do like them all right on the money line. We have seen this Hampton team play quite a bit better with regards to their defense recently, but this is still a team that can get a little bit cash from the outside. With regards to Hampton, you've got Kyrie Smolin down low, who's been able to give you 7.5 to 8 rebounds per game. I've been loving his game, but this is a Hampton team that allows opponents to shoot about 35.8% from three-point range. That is 293rd in all of college basketball. Now, North Carolina A&T has been far from impressive with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 260 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they do cut off the three-point line. They are a top 70 team in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage. A&T as well. They have been a top 45 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis as well. So I think that does win out for A&T in this spot, especially having two top-flight scorers, Ryan Forrest, Landon Glasper. These two guys combined for over 37 points per contest, albeit they don't shoot it well from three. Jonathan Lamothi has actually been your top three-point shooter, shoots 35.5% per three, 11.5 points per contest, but Cayman Shell just runs good, clean offense, 7 points, 3.5 assists, 1.3 turnovers per contest. This is an A&T team that's outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate, so they're going to get a little bit flat in there, but Lamothi gives you 6.5 rebounds per game. You've also got the gentleman from Greece and Nicholls Chitokildis, who's been able to give you about 9.5 points, 9 rebounds per contest, so I've been liking that. You've got a little bit of a top-heavy team that's been dealing with an injury to William Felton all season long. That has been hurting them, but that said, this has been a Hampton team that they themselves have been a little bit hit or miss with regards to their offense. They've and Noah Farrakhan, who was on that Eastern Michigan team a few seasons ago with Amani Bates, supplied the team with 13 points per contest, shoots in the mid-30s from 3 points. George Beal has been their main 3-point shooter, also shoots 87.5% at the free throw line, gives you about 12.5 points per contest, but Will Bristol's intermits along Xavier Long, two transfers that have combined for about 14 points per contest. With regards to Long, he's able to give you something down low and does shoot about 40% from 3-point range, but this is also a Hampton team that, along with their rough 3-point shooting defense, they've been allowing opponents to shoot well north of 275th in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage as well. This has been a unit that has been able to generate north of 13.5 turnovers per game. That's the top 100 mark in all of college basketball, but not like this team has been really lighting it up from 3-point range, where they've been really priding themselves is that they've been a top 75 team with regards to percentage of their missed shots. That does result in an offensive rebound, and this has been where North Carolina A&T has had their issues. They're about 306th in the country in terms of allowing second and third chance opportunities, but the same team that they themselves on the road do allow opponents to grab 29% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. So do you think that backcourt wins out for A&T in this spot? I did set them as a 1-point favorite, so do like A&T outright on the money line in the spot, and then I did set my total at a 147 as well. So you're at the 145.5, 146 in on the over to go along with A&T, who's in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game, to the over. 891, 892 on the card. It is Eastern Washington on the road against Montana State, and Montana State is a 5.5-point favorite. Total on this game, finding it between 144 to 144.5. I'll be writing this one up. I did set Montana State as north of a 9-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Montana State. This team has been able to do a really good job of guarding the 3-point line. They do rank in the top 35 in all of college basketball in that regard, and this simply is an Eastern Washington team that hasn't played a lot of defense all season long. Eastern Washington, 314th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and this is a Montana State team that at home, they're shooting 39.5% from 3-point range. Eastern Washington has had a really tough time being able to guard the arc all season long, and for Eastern Washington, they do return a few guys from a season ago. Nick McLean has been one of their top guys, being able to give you 14 plus points per contest. Shoots are relatively okay from 3-point range. Additionally, Mason Williams has come in. He's given the team 13.5 points per contest for Williams. He shoots 32% for 3, while McLean a little bit north of 41% from 3-point range, but for the Eastern Washington team, overall, ball. They're outside the top 250 with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. They've been able to do an okay job of getting to the free throw line, but they're outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They turn the ball over 13 times per contest. They allow opponents to shoot 36% from three, and they're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. Now, Montana State is not going to impose their will on the glass. This Montana State team outside the top 330 in terms of percentage of their missed shots. That does result in an offensive rebound, but you still have a pair of guys in Brandon Walker, Max Agbompolo, that combine for 10 rebounds and about 27 points per contest. Both of these guys are capable of shooting north of 34.5% from three-point. Additionally, Tyler Patterson has really turned it on with his outside shooting. He shoots 42.5% from three-point. It has been a Montana State team that on the interior, they've gotten gashed a little bit, but it's not like they're allowing teams to be able to just completely slice and dice them on the interior. They're still within the top 230 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage while doing an amazing job of being able to guard the perimeter. They've also been one of the most unlucky teams in all of college basketball. Teams are shooting 77.9% the free throw line against them. That's a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. We should see a little bit of improvement there, and this has been a Montana State team that's done a good job valuing the ball. They're in the top 75 in terms of ball security. They only turn the ball over 10 times per contest. You've got Jay Mullins, who's been able to give you 3 assists per contest, and I do think that that's going to be able to win out in this spot for Montana State. I did set Montana State as a 9-point favorite, so I'm going to be one to lay it. This is an Eastern Washington team that, as they always have been, they're a pretty up-tempo team. They're not necessarily playing at warp speed this far this season, but still a team that's in the top 155 in terms of total possessions per game. Montana State, they've been a little bit more of a mid-tempo team thus far this season in terms of total possessions per game. They're checking in about 215, so did set my total 149 along with laying it with Montana State. I'm in on this total over, and then this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 893, 894. Idaho is on the road against Montana. Montana is a 4.5-point favorite. Totals between 148.5 to 149. You do have a Montana team that's starting to crank up the tempo a little bit more. They've been about 153rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Idaho just really plays at no pace whatsoever. 250th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So did set my total more around a 147.5. I'm going to be in on this total under, but with regards to Montana, I do feel like home court advantage going to be relatively big in this spot, but I could only still make them a 5.5-point favorite. Right now in a lot of places, we're finding this at a 4.5. I'm just barely willing to lay it. Idaho has been able to do a little bit of a better job on the glass this season with having right around about 5.5 boards, 10 points per contest out of Jack Payne, and then additionally Julius Mims has been able to supply you with 6 rebounds per game, but this just continues to be a team that gets gashed with regards to their defense outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' field goal shooting percentage. They don't necessarily have that one super duper kryptonite this year on defense. They're just consistently bad in pretty much every single category of things, and this has not been an Idaho team that has necessarily been lighting it up from 3-point range. They do have Tyler Mears, who's been able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. He's been rock solid given the team double figures. Idaho as a whole, they shoot about 34.5% from 3, and this has been a Montana team that's been a little bit rough with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage, especially at home. At home, they're only shooting about 30.5% from 3-point range, but I do think that there's going to be some positivity coming in here, because if you take a look at the way that Idaho has been guarding the 3-point line away from home, it has been one of the lesser marks in all of college basketball. Idaho is allowing opponents to shoot a little bit north of 36% from 3-point range when they're at home. Meanwhile, this Montana team has been significantly better with their defense at home. We should see regression from this, as they're allowing opponents to shoot north of 39% from 3-point range away from home, 25% at home. That 39% should be going downward. The 25% should be going northward. But I mean, this is a Montana team that is allowing darn near 20 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside neutral court venue. And this has been an Idaho team that has been significantly better with regards to their defense at home as well, giving up about 8 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home. But for this Montana team, I do think that the key for this team, where you're going to be able to get out of Joe Pridgeon, as he's been very versatile, 12 points, 8 boards, began his career in the Patriot League like 5 seasons ago, but at 6'5", good versatility there. Malik Moore, Money Williams, these two guys have been able to combine for 27 plus points per contest. Moore has been dealing with a little bit of injury throughout the season, which has really hurt a lot of their perimeter shooting, as this guy overall for the season has been able to shoot in that neighborhood about 36% from 3-point range, but should be all good to go in this game, with Montana being able to get some ancillary production out of guys like Trajan Sawyer, who's able to give you 8 points, 4 boards per contest. And with the way that this Montana team in general has been able to do a solid job in terms of not allowing a lot of second chances, they've been a top 225 team in terms of not allowing teams to be able to pull in their misses as an offensive rebound. I do think that Montana finds a way to get the job done. I'm willing to lay up to 5 with Montana, so by total 147.5, also in on the under. Now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-663, 306-664. It is St. Francis of Pennsylvania. They are on the road facing off against Wagner, and Wagner does find themselves as a slight favorite of 2 points. total on this game is between 123 to a 124.5. Did set my total at a 123.5. So here at the 124, that is my buy point on the under. Got a Wagner team that just has all the makings of an under team, though. I do think that this is going to improve a little bit with regards to their offense and their tempo, but they're well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball, but as they always are, this is a rock-solid defense with regards to Wagner. I'm not going to call them an elite defense, but in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a Wagner team that's right now checking in the top 85 in all of college basketball. Very interestingly, they're giving up about 8.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot court setting. Meanwhile, St. Francis, Pennsylvania just getting torched, 330th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and that's a big reason why I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Wagner. It is the St. Francis of Pennsylvania team that has had Bobby Rosenberger really get it going, and he's been their main man. He's been able to do a nice job supplying for the team with 11.5 points, 4.5 boards per contest, and Riley Parker in the backcourt has really emerged as well. 3.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 11.5 points per game, does shoot 42.5% from three, and this has been a halfway decent three-point shooting unit for St. Francis of Pennsylvania. You include their games against non-D1 foes. This has been a team that has shot a little bit north of 34% from three-point range, but they're getting destroyed in terms of just down low in general. This has been a team that's been outside the top 275 with regards to rebound percentage, and this is a Wagner team that typically does a good job of guarding the perimeter. Once again, top 145 team with regards to their three-point shooting percentage defense, and for Wagner, they've got the best facilitator in this game, Javier Esquera. Even for how bad this Wagner offense has been, he's still been doling out nearly 5 assists per contest. You've got Zaire Williams, who's become that main go-to scorer for the team. He's been able to supply 12.5 points per contest, was out for a little bit of time towards the beginning part of the season. Zay Blake 2 seasons ago over at UW Green Bay was a 44% three-point shooter, shooting 39.5% from three, and for Wagner, they are shooting about 32.5% from three. It's not amazing, but I mean, it's a top 275 mark in all of college basketball. They've been pretty good in terms of being able to deny teams good looks at the basket, and this has been a Wagner team that's generated north of 14 turnovers per game. Meanwhile, St. Francis of Pennsylvania having their issues in the backcourt, holding on to the ball. They've been turning the ball over north of 13.5 times per contest, so I think that you get a sloppy game. I think that you get a slow game, and one that Wagner is going to be able to pull out. I did set Wagner as a 3.5 point favorite, so one to lay up to 3 with them, and at a 124 plus in on this total under. 306-665, 306-666. It is East Texas A&M, and they are going to be playing us to Southeast Louisiana. Southeast Louisiana is a favorite of 7 points. So this game between 137 to 137.5. Did set my total 134.5. I'm in on the under. East Texas A&M, bottom 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of being able to take care of the ball, and this has been a Southeast Louisiana team that has been pretty rock solid in terms of their defense as well. Southeast Louisiana, top 85 team in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage for Southeast Louisiana. They do have a little bit of difficulty on the glass, but have actually been better at denying offensive rebounds when they've been on the road rather than at home. They're allowing opponents to grab 40% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound at home, more like 27.5% of their shots in a roadside court venue, but they really don't have to worry about that too much with East Texas A&M. They don't have a ton down low with regards to the squad. You do have Khalik Abdul-Mateen, who's been able to do a nice job giving the team double figures, but for East Texas A&M, I was just expecting much more down low out of Josh Shaler, who comes over from East Tennessee State. He was a starter there a few seasons ago, about 6 points, 4 rebounds per game. East Texas A&M outside the top 330 with their 29% three-point shooting percentage, and they're getting destroyed from three-point range. You're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball guarding the three-point arc. Now, it is a Southeast Louisiana team that isn't necessarily some sort of a flamethrower with regards to their three-point shooting percentage as well. This has been a team that has been shooting just above 30% from three-point range, and I do like what I'm seeing out of Sam Hines Jr. He's going to be the best player in this game. He's been able to give out 15.5 points, 6.5 boards, 2 assists per contest. Comes in from South Florida. He shoots 45% from three-point range, but team as a whole more around about 33.5% from the outside. This has been a team that's had their struggles with regards to offense as well, outside the top 275 in terms of their ball security, but still do have Jakevion Buckley, who gives you 2 steals, 4 assists, 13 points per contest, and Jeremy Alizi has really been able to come on strong as well. He's been able to give you nearly 5 boards, 10.5 points per game. This is a Southeast Louisiana team that should easily be able to win the battle down low in this game. It's an East Texas A&M team that just really doesn't have a lot going for them. They've had just 2 wins straight up thus far this season, and I do think that with the way that Southeast Louisiana is able to control things inside, that they get a comfortable win in a lower scoring game. And Southeast Louisiana outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. So my total 134.5. I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 10 here with Southeast Louisiana. 306-667, 306-668. Florida A&M is playing us at Mississippi Valley State. Florida A&M is a 15.5 to a 16.5 point favorite, and the total on this game is between 136.5 to a 137.5. I'm willing to dumpster dive on Mississippi Valley State. I set them as a 13.5 point underdog. This is a Florida A&M team that I legitimately think is a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball. The fact that they're this big of a favorite really speaks how bad Mississippi Valley State is, and Mississippi Valley State is bad. Do not get me wrong. This team is dead last in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they're scoring more than 5 points fewer per 100 possessions than the next worst offense in all of college basketball. Bottom 10 team with regards to rebound rate. They turn the ball over a ton, but what is this Florida A&M team really doing well themselves? They're one of the worst teams at being able to take care of the ball in all of college basketball. They are getting torched from three-point. You're outside the top 330 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, or 320th in field goal shooting percentage on defense as well. Sterling Young has been able to give you 14.5 points per game. He's going to be the best scorer in this game. And I like the way that Milton Matthews has come on for his team as well. He's been able to pop a few threes, not quite at the rate of Young, who's shooting 40% from three-point. And this has been a Florida A&M team that has shot about 34% from three-point, but they really don't have a ton down low. Meanwhile, Arthur Tate for this Mississippi Valley State team, he has been your saving grace for this team. He's been able to give the team double figures, so he's done a rock solid job there. And Donovan Sanders is probably your top defender as well. Actually was among qualifying D1 players, a top 75 player in terms of steals last season, steal and a half, 9 points, 2.5 assists per contest, but or Mississippi Valley State, it truly is a dumpster fire with this team. Down low as Elvin Stridek Jr. is really the lone guy on the roster. It gives you north of 3.7 rebounds per game. It's rough to say the least. This is a bad Mississippi Valley State team. This is just a Florida A&M team that even against Mississippi Valley State, I can't lay this sort of a number with, and I recognize how bad Mississippi Valley State is. So this is a total I set at a 129. I think that you see a lot of incompetent offense in this game. Both of these teams, low-tempo teams. So I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with Mississippi Valley State. 306-669, 306-670. McNeese is going to be playing us to Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin is a 15 to a 15.5 point underdog, and your total is between 130 to 130.5. With McNeese, I did set them as a favorite of 16.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Stephen F. Austin, right now out of 364 D1 teams, they are 364th in terms of turnovers per game, and in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball. Now, the one thing that Stephen F. Austin has going for them, this has still been a very rock-solid defense. For Stephen F. Austin, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 27th in all of college basketball, and it's actually traveled really well this year as well. In terms of games in a roadside shoot-your-court environment, Stephen F. Austin is actually a top 15 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so I am in on this under. I did set my total at a 124.5, as Stephen F. Austin doesn't allow for a lot of good looks from three-point range or anything like that, but when you just keep turning the ball over time and time again, and this is a McNeese team that is one of the better teams in all of college basketball generating turnovers as well. McNeese, a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I think that they just simply outclass them down low as well. Christian Shoemate, Joe Charles, these two guys have been able to come in for 12 plus rebounds per game. You've been able to get some good scoring as well out of both Sincere Parker along with Javon Garcia. These two guys combined for about 27 points per game. But it's really been ailing this McNeese team. Your top four scorers all shoot below 34% from three-point range. DJ Richards is really the lone guy on the roster that's shooting above 34% from three, 9 points, 39% three-point shooter. He's been rock solid there, but I do think that for Stephen F. Austin, again, the turnovers are just going to be too costly. They just don't have a lot outside of the man that comes in from UMass that has been able to give the team much production in terms of the backcourt, as they had missing towards the beginning part of the season Keon Thompson since he's come back about 10 or so games ago. 12.5 points per contest, shooting about 31% from three-point range, but still, even with him in the fold, this is a team that is venturing to try to be able to get to 60 points night in, night out. Again, it is a bunch that they shoot also 24.5% from three. That is dead last in all of college basketball. Bottom 5 in the country in terms of their free throw shooting percentage. I think that the defense is going to hold up just fine in this game. They just don't have the offense, in my opinion, to get the job done or even be able to cover this game. I set my line at a 16.5. I'm going to be willing to lay out with McNeese. And with regards to the total, I set mine at a 124.5. I'm in on the under. 306-671, 306-72. You've got Bethune-Cookman playing against Arkansas Pine Bluff. And Pine Bluff is an underdog of 14.5 points. So it's between 154 to a 155. And did set my total 157.5. I'm in on the over. Bethune-Cookman, if you look it from SWAC standards, and the SWAC has a lot of teams that are giving up a bunch of points because you've got a whole bunch of bye games in there, what have you. But I mean, they've been really your top defense in this conference. They are a top 225 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They're not necessarily doing as great of a job in terms of generating turnovers as they did a season ago. And you still want to see a little bit more of Daniel Ruzon. Ruzon last season was over at Weber State, and he was able to do a very fine job of pulling in their 6+ rebounds per game down to about 4.5 rebounds per game this season. But have to love what Brayon Freeman has been able to bring to the table. Freeman was over 2 seasons ago at Rhode Island, and he was a double-figure scorer there, and he's translated that here to the SWAC. 16 points, 2.5 assists per contest. Doesn't shoot it well from 3, but Trey Thomas does. He shoots 39% from 3, 13 points per contest, while Reggie Ward has been able to pull in there 8 rebounds per game. Flip side, you just don't have that sort of firepower with Arkansas Pine Bluff out of everyone except for one man. The doctor is now in the house. Dr. Bradley. He has been eligible for, I believe, now 4 games for the team, and he's averaging north of 20 points per contest. Now, he doesn't necessarily have the most efficiency with regards to his offense, as he's right now been able to shoot only about 47.5% of the free throw line, but he shoots 14.3 free throws per game. So, he is certainly doctoring up some house calls to the free throw line right now, averaging 25.5 points per contest. And Christian Moore gives you more, 4.5 assists, 12.5 points per contest. Pine Bluff is a bottom 10 team in the country in terms of both points allowed on a per possession basis and rebound percentage, but ever since the Doc has been in the house, they have not been able to win any of these games, but offense has been rock solid. They were slowed down a little bit against Prairie View, but with the Doctor, they've scored at least 75 points in 3 out of their 4 games. I do think that this is going to be an up and down game. I think that they're certainly going to be surrendering their fair share of points, as right now out of 364 teams, 364th in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so I do think that there's going to be triumphs there, but I like the way that they've been able to get a little bit of something down low as well out of Dr. Bradley. He's been able to give you 9+ rebounds per game. That's big because Robert Lewis, their main rebounder, is currently out due to injury, and outside of that, Quentin Bolton is like the only guy that gives you 4+ rebounds per game, but also shoots 43.5% from 3-point. So I do think that you get an up and down high scoring expose. I just think that in the end, Bethune-Cookman completely outclasses this Pine Bluff team that plays no defense whatsoever. Set my total 157.5, and on the over, I did say Cookman as a 15.5 point favorite, one to lay up to 15 with them. 306-673, 306-674. You've got Colgate playing against Bucknell. Bucknell's an underdog of 6 to 6.5 points, and your totals between 133.5 to a 134.5. You feel like Colgate's starting to find their offense a little bit more. I set my line at a 136.5 with regards to the total. I'm in on the over. It is a Colgate team that's outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and credit to Bucknell, they actually have been a halfway decent defense this year. They are a team that is ranking in the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. That said, this has been a Bucknell team that has been outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers per possession, but one thing that this Colgate team has never really done, and they're never really going to do, is generate turnovers. This is a Colgate team that in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they are well outside the top 275 in all of college basketball, but now you've been able to get Jeff Woodyard back in the fold. He's their main big man, 13.7 rebounds, was out for much of non-conference play, and then have a trio of guys, Parker Jones, Brady Cummins, along Jalen Cox. I'll give you between 9 and 10 points per contest. These 3 guys have done a nice job of being able to combine for about 13 or so rebounds per game. Cox throws in their 4 assists per contest, and Nikolai Louis Jacques has been able to give you 12 points per contest. As this Colgate team, if you look overall for the season, they shoot 35% from 3-point range. In conference play, they've been shooting closer to about 39.5% from 3-point range, and in terms of points per game in conference, they're back up well north of 70 points per game. This has been a team that's been getting torched from 3-point range, though. For Colgate, they're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and this is just flat out a team that's going to give you some second and third chances. With Woodyard back in the fold, that's going to help them out, but you still have on the flip side Noah Williamson for Bucknell, a true 7-footer that's able to pull in there north of 7 rebounds per game. Colgate, in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, they're outside the top 150 with that regard, and Bucknell's outside the top 200 with that as well, so I do think that there's going to be second and third chances in this game. And then Josh Bosco has been your main scorer for Bucknell. He's been able to give you 14 points per contest, up north of 3 assists per contest, as Alvin Edmonds was the main facilitator for the team to begin the season. He got hurt, and he's just never really been able to regain the reins with that regard. They're still dealing with Ian Moda, a 6'6" combo player that shoots it well from 3, dealing with injury, and ever since he went down, this offense has really been going down the toilet bowl, so that does cause me to be a little bit more bearish on this Bucknell team. As a result, I did set Colgate as a 6.5 point favorite. Here at the 6, I wouldn't be willing to go any further, but willing to lay the 6 with Colgate, and in on the over semi-total 136.5. 306-675, 306-676. This will be a game I write up. Fairleigh Dickinson, they hope to be fairly priced on the road against Chicago Chicago State. Chicago State is an underdog of 2 points, and your total on this game is 143. Rode up Fairleigh Dickinson. I set them as an 8-point favorite, as right now for the Chicago State team, you don't have a single guy that's giving you double figures, and they are the second worst offense in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Boy, oh boy, they should be very fortunate that Mississippi Valley State exists, because this team is pretty awful themselves. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're outside the top 300 in terms of a rebound rate. Jalen Forrest along Noble Crawford both give you 9.6 points per contest, and to their credit, these two guys combine to shoot about 35% from 3-point. They combine for a little bit over 9 rebounds per game. These two guys, along with Cameron Jurgens, who's been able to give you 4.3 rebounds per game, lone 3 guys on the roster give you 3+ rebounds per game. They are absolutely awful on the glass. They turn the ball over 14.5 times per game. Chicago State is actually looking to play with a little bit of tempo. I have no idea why they're looking to play with tempo, because they're so sloppy with the ball, but they're 90th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and this Fairleigh Dickinson team guns it. They're in the top 85 in terms of total possessions per game. Fairleigh Dickinson on the road has been shooting 33+% from 3-point, and Fairleigh Dickinson has actually been a really good perimeter defense. This is despite the fact that they're well outside the top 270 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but top 75 team in terms of denying the 3-point arc, as you've got Terrence Brown, who's going to be by far the top scorer in this game. 21.5 points, 6 boards, 3 assists. He's right now only shooting about 30% from 3-point range, but really stuffs the stat sheet outside that. And then you've got some good outside shooting alongside of him. Ahmed Baba Bray has been able to shoot 42% from 3, 10 points per contest. Dylan Jones has been able to shoot 39.5% from 3, 10.5 points per contest. And then Joel Emanuel stays about 6'6". He shoots 38% from the outside, throws in their 11.5 points per contest. And each of your top 4 scores for Fairleigh Dickinson are all better than the top scorer for Chicago State as of right now. This team does a little bit of a better job on the glass too. They do leave themselves very vulnerable on the inside, but just have no inside presence with regards to the Chicago State team either. So the main kryptonite of Fairleigh Dickinson not going to be unearthed in this one. I do think that you get enough possessions for a relatively solid up and down game. I set my total 144. I'm in on the over, but wrote up Fairleigh Dickinson laying the number, set them as an 8-point favorite. 306-677, 306-678. You've got Long Island playing against Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst is an underdog of 7.5 to 8 points. So on this game between 125.5 to 126.5 with Mercyhurst. I made them an underdog of 10 points. I'm going to be one to lay with Long Island. Long Island has really been able to come a long way with regards to their defense, and you've got Sadi Lassou down low, who's been able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. Long Island has actually been denying teams of a second chance opportunity very well at home. They're allowing opponents to only grab about 20.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound in home games. That's a top 25 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you've got a Mercyhurst team that, well, they have not been good on the glass. Typically with these D2 teams, they come up to the D1 level and just don't have a lot of size early on, and that's what we're seeing with Mercyhurst. 336th in the country with regards to defensive rebound percentage. Now, they do have a few guys that are able to give you some scoring, and this is a Mercyhurst team that they have the ability to be able to pop it from 3-point range with Jeff Planutis, give you 14 points per contest. He shoots 36.5% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, each of your top 3 scorers should at least 36.8% from 3-point range, with Aiden Reichert, Bernie Blunt III being able to combine for about 23 points per contest. So I've been liking what I've been seeing out of them, but this is also a team that's really given it up from 3-point range. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Long Island, not a team that's really going to bomb it from 3-point range, but you've had Malachi Davis do a nice job knifing to the rim, being able to give this team 17.5 points. He only shoots, again, 26.5% from 3, but nearly 3 assists, 1.7 steals per contest, and then the son of the coach Rod Strickland and Terrell Strickland just stuffs the stat sheet. 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists, steal and a half per contest, 8.5 points per game. He shoots more like 35.5% from 3-point. And it's a Long Island team that legitimately has been able to do a nice job of being able to guard the 3-point line as well. That is really where the bread is buttered with regards to this team. And for Long Island, they've been a top 125 team in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. It's a Long Island team that now has Brent Davis back in the fold, who generated multiple steals per game while he was over at Chicago State last season. And for this LIU team, they're a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, you've got a Mercyhurst team that, to their credit, they've been in the top 75 with this regard as well, but they do turn the ball over a little bit more than what you'd like for a low-tempo team, and I do think that Long Island, just with regards to their overall size, bludgeon them on the glass, find a way to be able to get the job done in a game where I do think the Mercyhurst is going to be able to drain just a few threes and do just enough to do their part with regards to this total. I did set my total at a 128. I'm in on the over, and with Long Island, one to lay up to 9.5 with them. 306-679, 306-680. You've got Nicholls playing against Lamar. Lamar does find themselves as underdogs of 3.5 to 4 points. Total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 141.5 to a 142. Set my line at 3, so I'm going to be willing to take the 3.5 to 4 here with Lamar. Lamar has really been able to do a better job with their defense than they have in past years. This has always been a team that's been pretty ghastly with that regard, but Hamilton down low has been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game. Team has been pretty sure-handed on the glass, and as a result, this is a Lamar team that in a road/court setting has been a top 110 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and Nicholls doesn't necessarily have the best metrics, but they did play a really tough non-conference schedule. They've had a few injuries to deal with. They're back up into the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for the Nicholls team, you do have some relatively good versatility all across the boulevard with this team, as you've been able to have Trey English give you about 2.5 to 3 assists per contest. That has helped with Byron Ireland being in and out due to injury in the backcourt, but he's back. He's been able to give the team 14 points, 3 assists. Doesn't shoot it well from 3, but that's why you've got Rob Brown shooting 39% from 3, 12.5 points per contest, while Jamal West is sort of that do-it-all stat sheet stuff for 10 points, block and a half, 5.5 rebounds per game. So been liking what I've been seeing there. Ike Cornish has been in and out of the lineup all season long, though. That's been a little bit of an issue. And for Mekhi Collins, I was expecting a little bit more out of him. He's only been able to give the team right around about 5.5 points per contest. Last season, he was a little bit muted and he was a little bit on the bench, but you tell that he was starting to get you a little bit more of something down low. So I'm going to be interested to see if he gives you a bit more here in the back half of the season. Meanwhile, for this Lamar team, they went to the junior college level to find some talent, and Alexis Marmayoles has really been able to stand out. 15 points, 2.5 assists. He's shooting 40% from 3-point range. Jay Sean Jackson, 4.2 assists, less than 2 turnovers per game, 11.5 points per contest. He's been rock solid down low, along with Adam Hamilton. Andrew Holyfield has been able to step up, give you about 6+ rebounds per game, as in terms of percentage of missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. This Nicholls team, they are going to be having their hands full because Lamar is in the top 55 in all of college basketball in this regard. It is a Lamar team that as well is a top 125 team in terms of generating turnovers, and I do think that Lamar is going to do a little bit of a better job of being able to guard the 3-point line. This is a Lamar team that is allowing opponents to shoot 32% from 3-point, and that drops all the way down to 31.1% in a road/court setting. That's a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Nicholls, they have been a team that's been in the top 15 themselves with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, so I do think that that's going to help mute the scoring just a little bit more in this game. As a result, I did set my total at a 141, despite the fact that these are two relatively mid-tempo teams, so here at the 142, I like the under end. Here at north of 3, going to be taking those points with Lamar. 306-681, 306-682. You've got Incarnate Word playing us to UT Rio Grande Valley. The Vaqueros of UT Rio Grande Valley are underdogs of 2.5 points. 148 to 148.5 is your total line with Grand Valley. I actually set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. And the big reason why I do like UT Rio Grande Valley in this spot is because the bread and butter of this Incarnate Word team is being able to make threes. You know what this UT Rio Grande Valley team does very well? They do a really good job of being able to guard the 3-point line, as Grand Valley right now, 33rd in the country in terms of opponents to 3-point shooting percentage. They're allowing opponents to shoot just 30.1% from 3-point range. And Incarnate Word has not been savory with regards to their defense. They're outside the top 230 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And Incarnate Word, 356 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. This should go southward, but they're right now allowing at home opponents to shoot 43.7% from 3-point range. That is the bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball. And Incarnate Word is very much based around the Ball State backcourt from a season ago. They brought in Jalen Anderson along Davion Bailey. Bailey has been your top scorer, shooting 41.5% from 3, 17.5 points per contest. Meanwhile, Anderson, as that main facilitator, 5.5 assists, throws in their 13 points per game. And Jordan Pike has been shooting 52% from 3 points with 12 points per contest. At some point, I do think that that's going to taper off a little bit, but with this Incarnate Word team, they just allow for a lot of wide open looks there. They've actually been relatively solid at being able to guard from the interior as well. This has been a team that has been in the top 100 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that the Vaqueros, with the way that they guard the arc, and along with that, having just a good backcourt, going to find a way to get the job done. KT Ramey, Decadrian Thorne, along with Cliff Davis, have been able to combine for about 35.5 points per contest. You've got Davis shooting 37% from 3-point range. These guys have been able to do an okay job of taking care of the ball, though Grand Valley is one of those teams that's outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. But this is also a Grand Valley team that is a little bit better with regards to the glass as well. They've been able to do a nice job finding a way to be able to get a second and third chance. And this Incarnate Word team, while they do a pretty solid job on the boards, they're 275th in the country in terms of percentage of missed shots by an opponent that results in an offensive rebound. Meanwhile, for this UT Rio Grande Valley team, are they number 1 in terms of offensive rebound rate? No, but they still do generate a offensive rebound on about 31.4% of their missed shots, and in a roadside shoot score venue, that actually goes up to about 32%, and that is a top 75 mark in all of college basketball. Do think that that's going to be just enough for them to get the job done in this spot. Did set my total 148.5. Got a Grand Valley team that has gotten to 70 plus points in pretty much all but 2 of their games thus far this season. I do think that this is going to be an up and down game, and though Incarnate Word outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, their defense has really been giving it up, and their offense has been pretty prolific. So I'm going to be in on this total over at a 148 or less. I do like Grand Valley on the money line. 306-683, 306-684. Northwestern St plays us to New Orleans. New Orleans is an underdog of 8 points. The last game is 144. Wrote this one up. I set Northwestern as a 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number with the Northwestern St Demons. This has been a unit that has been outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but for New Orleans, they shoot as a collective about 30% from 3-point range. They are well outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I like the duo of Micah Thomas, Lon John Sanders out there in the backcourt. Sanders has been able to give you about 2.5 assists, 10.5 points per game, shoots 38.5% from 3-point range, and then Addison Patterson, a former top 100 recruit, just does it all for the team. 12.5 points, 3.5 assists, 5+ rebounds per game. Willie Williams should be able to win that battle down low. He's been able to supply this team with about 7 rebounds per game, and you've had Jared Colonel be able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest as well. In terms of block shot rate, this has been a top 50 team in all of college basketball, so New Orleans, a team has really struggled from the outside. They're also going to have a little bit of a tough time on the inside as well. You've been able to get a little bit more out of MJ Thomas down low, who's been able to supply 6.5 rebounds per game, as James White has had to be the do-it-all dynamo. 19 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, shoots 43.5% from 3-point range. He's the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 10 points per contest, and really, outside of what you're able to get out of James White, there's just not a lot else to speak of with regards to this team. New Orleans is a team that just does not take a lot of threes as well, because they're so bad at being able to make their threes, and they themselves, outside the top 320 in terms of 3-point shooting defense, they're outside the top 275 with regards to overall field goal shooting percentage as well. The team has turned the ball for 13 plus times per contest. I do think that this is just a rough state of affairs for New Orleans. They just don't have a lot of depth with their team. Those Cadavius Hunter, a former top 150 junior college transfer, has been able to get the team right around about 9 points per contest, but was expecting a little bit more of Jamin Vincent, has not really come to the forefront, and do think that Northwestern State takes it to a bad New Orleans defense. I did set my total out of 145.5, so circumstance where I'm going to be one to take a shot on the over and one to lay with Northwestern State. 36-685, 36-686. Lemoyne is going to be playing against Sonel. Sonel is a favorite of 1.5 to 2 points total on this game between 142.5 to 143, and with Sonel, I set them as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay up to 2 with them. It is a Lemoyne team that's just been all sorts of banged up this year, and Zach Decken, their main point guard, has been able to give about 4+ assists per contest, but he's a career less than 30% 3-point shooter. Just really does not add a lot from the outside. Now they are starting to get more of their main pieces back, as you should have in this game of Cypher Owens, their top scorer, 13.5 points, 8.5 boards. He's been able to give a lot with regards to down low, and along those lines as well, about 2.5 assists per game. And then AJ Dantzler was missing for a little bit of time this year, 10.5 points per contest. He's their top 3-point shooter. He's been able to shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, and man, that began his career over at Notre Dame. Robbie Carpenter, when he's been out there, he's been able to give you about 11 points per contest. He's been in and out of the fold, should be good to go in this game as well, but I mean, there's just been a lot of moving parts in general, and this has been a Stone Hill team that has been pretty rock solid with regards to just being able to execute on offense. This has been a top 175 team with their 3-point shooting percentage. Todd Baronga has been able to do a really good job as a 6'7", little bit of a do-it-all player. 12 points, 6 boards from 3-point range. He shoots about 41% from 3-point range. And then Josh Morgan, who comes in from Incarnate Word, 12.5 points. He's been able to shoot about 38.5% from 3-point range. It's a Stone Hill team that they're not amazing with regards to their 3-point shooting defense, but I mean, they're competent with it. They're allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range in that neighborhood about 33 or so percent from 3-point range. They're checking in the top 125 of all of college basketball, and in a roadside shoot score venue that drops down to less than 32% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, it is a Lemoyne team that they themselves are allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range right in that neighborhood about 34%. That's outside the top 200. Naturally, this has been a Lemoyne team that just has not been able to generate for themselves second chances as well. Dwayne Karama, outside of Cypher Owens, is really the lone guy that's able to give you 5+ rebounds per game. They're about 283rd in the country with regards to offensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, the Stone Hill team should give themselves just a few more chances for the second, third chance opportunities. Stone Hill has been only about 320th in the country with regards to offensive rebound percentage, but they've been getting better as the season has gone along and into NDEC play, and do think that they find a way to get the job done here against a banged up Lemoyne team. So did set my line at 2.5. I'm going to be willing to lay up to a deuce here with Stone Hill with regards to the total. Set mine at a 142.5. So here at the 143, that is my buy point on the under. 306.687, 306.688. Texas Southern plays Western Jackson State. Jackson State an underdog of 1.5 to 2 points. 139 to 138 is your total line. With Texas Southern, I did set them as a 2-point favorite. 1.5 is the absolute max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay. Now Jackson State is getting back a guy in Deshaun Ruffin, who was actually a starter a few seasons ago out there at Ole Miss, and he has been a nice impact player ever since he has returned to the fold for the team, but his three-point shooting just is not there as of right now for Ruffin. He's played in 7 games, 15.5 points per contest, throws in there about 3 assists, 2 steals per game, but he's also shooting 26.5% from 3. This for a Jackson State team that's outside the top 320 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and outside the top 340 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and this has been a team that's been outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate as well, albeit they might have the best rebounder in this game in Roby Mansell, 7 boards, 9.5 points, also does throw in there 2 assists per contest, so a little bit of versatility there, but this is a Jackson State team that's very rough with regards to their offense, and the reason why they need that 3-point shooting, they're a bottom 5 team in all of college basketball with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage as well, and this is a Texas Southern team that is not the same rebounding team that we've seen in past years, well outside the top 275 with regards to rebound rate, but to have Kenny Hunter who comes in from Louisiana Tech, 9.5 points, 6.5 boards, block and half per contest, and this has been a team that's been much more prolific with their 3-point shooting. Their top 2 scorers in Zaire Hayes along Kavion McLean have been able to combine for 23.5 points per game. These 2 guys combined to shoot about 39% from 3-point range, and McLean shoots 96% at the free throw line as Texas Southern has been able to take some strides forward with regards to their offense, and this is a Texas Southern team that does rank in the top 125 with regards to generating turnovers as well. They need it because they themselves have been pretty grody in terms of the way that they've been able to guard the 3-point arc. Texas Southern allowing teams to shoot from 3-point range in that neighborhood of about 35% from 3-point range, though that goes down to about 32% when they are at home, and for Jackson State, this has been a team that just has not been able to guard the perimeter when they've been away from home all season long. Jackson State in roadside-neutral court games allowing opponents to shoot 38% from 3-point range. I think that'll be just enough for an over. You do have 2 teams that aren't necessarily playing with a whole ton of pace, but Texas Southern has actually cranked up their tempo just a little bit more from past years in terms of total possessions per game. They're a top 25 team in all of college basketball, albeit not an efficient top 25 in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but they're going to be a lot of possessions in their games. At Jackson State, they're a top 30 team as well, so I do think that there's going to be a lot of wasted possessions, but just enough tempo in general to get an over. Set my total 142, so in on that over, and I'm going to lay up to 1.5 here with Texas Southern. 306.689, 306.690. Houston Christian plays us to Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Corpus Christi is a 5-point road favorite. Total on this game between 144.5 to a 145. One to lay with Corpus Christi. Set them as a 5.5 point favorite. Owen Dees and company have been able to do a much better job of shooting it from 3-point range than last season. Last season, Texas A&M Corpus Christi outside the top 275 in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Now this season, they've been able to shoot more like 34.5% from the outside. You've got Gary Clark, who does a nice job down low, 14.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game, and it's a Corpus Christi team that once again lands themselves in the top 150 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Houston Christian has been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball. I just feel like this has been more or less because they've been playing slowly, though, because they used to be in past years that they were one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball, and when you play super-duper up-tempo like Houston Christian used to, they're now outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. That allows for more variance, and that causes for more blowouts. Meanwhile, Houston Christian right now outside the top 250 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Julian Mackey, who's been able to give you 14 plus points per contest, and then Elijah Brooks, who has come on over from North Dakota. He's been able to give you some good contributions as well. He's been able to give you double figures, but don't have a lot down low with regards to this team as well. They're rebound percentage is well outside the top 175 in all of college basketball. This has been a Houston Christian team that the one thing that they've been able to do a relatively solid job of is being able to cut teams off from 3-point range. They're allowing opponents to shoot less than 32% from 3-point range, and at home that goes down to 29.5%, so they've been a top 100 team with that regard. This is a Corpus Christi team, though, that they're very much looking to knife the ball inside, even though they've been a solid 3-point shooting team. In terms of percentage of shots that come from 3-point range, one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball in that regard. This has been a Corpus Christi team that has been one of the better teams at being able to generate turnovers in. Houston Christian outside the top 225 in terms of ball security. Meanwhile, turnovers for us on a per possession basis. Corpus Christi within the top 125. So, do you think that Corpus Christi, despite their grody 62.6% free throw shooting percentage, it's something that you should be alerted of. Not great to say the least. I do think that they win from within. Corpus Christi has actually been a top 25 team with regards to their field goal shooting percentage, and I think that that's enough to get the job done and get you an over. Set my total 145.5 in on the over, and one to lay up to 5 here with Corpus Christi, and wrap things things up with 306, 691, 306, 692. Another game that I wrote up as Prairie View is playing us to Alcorn State. Alcorn State is a underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. The last game is 142.5 to 143.5. I did set this total at 152. I'm in on the over. Prairie View is a top 40 team in terms of total possessions per game. Both of these teams are outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Both of these teams outside the top 335 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and Prairie View is allowing opponents to grab north of 39% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and yet I made them a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it because this has been a Prairie View team that has actually been pretty rock solid with regards to their offense. You do have a lot of guys that able to stroke it from three-point range. Dodge, Petaway, along Dink Anderson being the main two of them, as these two guys have been able to combine for just under 37 points per contest. Now, Nick Anderson has been dealing with quite a bit of an injury. That's been a big reason why we've seen the offense taper off just a little bit with regards to this Prairie View team, but I do think that with having Petaway being able to take over the lion's share of the offense without Anderson giving you 20-plus points per contest, he's been able to do a nice job there. And then you've got Jordan Tillman, who's been able to give you quite a bit more recently as well. Began his career over at Florida A&M. He's been able to do a nice job supplying for this team. A combined 28 points in the last 3 games overall for the season, 8.5 points per contest. His 3-point shooting has been off thus far this season, but he does give you nearly a steal, a little bit of facilitation out there in the backcourt as well. And again, this is a team that they're just not grabbing any rebounds whatsoever. Outside of Anderson, you don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Marcel Bryan to be able to give you those 4.5 boards, 7 points per contest. And then on the flip side for Alcorn State, I do think that Marcus Tankersley is going to continue to progress moving forward. He's been averaging about 8.5 to 9 points per contest 2 seasons ago over at Detroit. Was a 14-plus point per game scorer, and you've been able to have Shaquille Gates-Wyatt along with Keontae Cornelius be able to combine for about 20 points per contest. With Gaines-Wyatt, he's been able to give you about 2.5 assists per contest, and you've got Cornelius now shooting 38.5% from three-point range, but this is a team that they just give up way too many second and third chances. And Alcorn State, they themselves do turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, but Prairie View used to be a heat-seeking missile, a team that used to be able to generate a whole bunch of turnovers. They are still a team that has been a top 125 team with this regard, but we've seen them take a little bit of setback from that this season. They do allow a lot of wide open looks from three-point range, and having Omari Hamilton, who's been able to give you 8 points per contest, shoot about 33% from three-point range, should be just enough to be able to get you an over in this spot. But with this Alcorn State team and the way that they have just not been able to guard the interior as well, outside the top 345 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, Prairie View gets this thing cranked up, and they find a way to get the job done. I set Prairie View as a 6-point favorite. Want to lay the number, and with regards to write-up, in on the over, set my total 152, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Rob Donaldson of the Rob's Best Bets Show for joining me in the live segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @JNet_D1. Keep in mind, letter CM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. And if you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like here on this podcast, that 5-star review, and I'm coming at you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. So I'll back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.